I'm Tim Flanagan, and we are here with another episode of Winning Through Culture. I'm excited today to be with TJ McCullough. He is the editor of the Charlotte Business Journal here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Welcome, TJ.
Hey, Tim. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you with us. So, a couple things we were going to talk about today. The general overview of what I really would like to discuss is the best places to work. That is a program that you guys have had for a long time. There are a number of businesses locally that participate in that. We have participated in that as well. I think it's a pretty unique opportunity for a business to be recognized through a very ultimately scientific approach to the type of organization they run. And before we jump into that topic, though, there were two other things that I would love to do. One of which is talk a little bit about you and your background. We've known each other several years now, and I think it's been wonderful for me to watch your career progress at the Charlotte Business Journal, which is owned by American City Business Journals. I thought it'd be kind of cool to talk a little bit about American City Business Journals and ultimately, which I just learned today, who they are a part of, but really also discuss the culture of leadership that seems to be very intentional in that organization. So why don't we start with a little bit about your background, TJ's background. I know you have a lot of interesting things in your background to share.
Yeah, well, don't know how interesting, but yeah, I will certainly share that. And, I guess kind of start from the beginning and not to draw it out too much, but grew up in the Panhandle of Florida, played sports my entire life. What moved me up to the Carolinas was a basketball scholarship, Gardner-Webb University, go running Bulldogs.
Yeah.
So met my wife there, had a great career there. And at the end of the day, she moved down from New York. I asked her, why was she going to Gardner-Webb? What's a girl from Long Island coming to Gardner-Webb? Southern Baptist School in North Carolina. I was like, I'm here on a basketball scholarship. What brought you down? So they have one of the top American sign language schools in the nation. That's what she was there for on scholarship. And she already had a brother that was living in Charlotte, a brother and a sister-in-law at the time. So at the end of the day, we ended up staying. And what kept me here is I'll never forget is I was playing basketball my entire career. I never focused on getting a job. I never focused on going to career fairs. I thought basketball was going to last forever, just like a smart 21, 22-year-old thinks. I'll never forget, I got the call because we were still staying with my brother and sister-in-law now in Charlotte. Got the call from my mom, and they're like, hey, you have to get a job. You're going to be coming back to Florida. And that kind of woke me up. I was like, oh, okay. I need to,
So I got
to
Charlotte.
Right.
Job.
I want to stay. I don't want to go back and live in my parents' basement and turn into that story. But I got my degree in business administration marketing. Never thought I would find the media world. Never even had it in the thought of my head. So I had a buddy that told me about this company. Hey, have you ever heard of the Sports Business Journal, Sports Business Daily? They're owned by American City Business Journals. At the time, I was like, I have no idea what that is. Well, we have an entry-level marketing position open. Do you want to apply for it? Absolutely. Where can I sign up? Because obviously my whole point was I'd take the job away. I just wanted to stay and make sure that I was around Michelle, and we're staying in Charlotte, which is a city that we love. And now we've been home to it for 17 plus years. So get the job. And from there, kind of talked about that culture piece is kind of built my career path from there. We're truly start from the bottom as a marketing associate position, answering phone calls, transferring them to the right people. At the end of the day, I was a glorified receptionist, if that's the best way. Right. A switchboard operator. Exactly. Taking the calls that are, people that are upset and the ones that are good, I transfer them to the right people. But from there, I kind of transitioned into the business side of selling subscriptions, then moved over to the Charlotte Business Journal selling advertising. That's where I first met you on the advertising team with Ollie and those guys and Kevin, who's running the Denver Business Journal now. And then from there, just, again, fostering that culture within American City Business Journals and just seeing the success that I had, continuing them to give me the chance to move up in my career, giving me the director of advertising position, which runs the business side. And then from there, when Kevin transitioned to Denver, the publisher position opened up and went for it. It was not the easiest process because there was a lot of competition for it. But at the end of the day, they decided to give me a shot. I think the youngest publisher at the time to run a business unit. And since then, I've been grateful ever since.
Well, I do think I introduced you as the editor, so I'm glad we corrected that. Because I was like, hey, I think he's the publisher. I should have corrected myself
it's
there.
Fine.
Yeah. Well, there's editorial and there's the business side. And
that's true.
The two stay very separate for obvious reasons in that business, in your business. Yeah, as I was prepping for our time together today, what really struck me was having been here in Charlotte myself for 18 years and Well, Kevin Pitts was one of the first people I met in Charlotte. He had just gotten here as well from Philadelphia, which is where I had gone to college. But as I look back over the 18 years I've been here and the relationship we've had with the Business Journal, it's interesting because American City Business Journals is a family business. And it's clear to me, even though this is to talk about best places to work, they seem to be a best place to work. Obviously, can't enter their own program, but they've really done a great job of developing leaders. And your story is, I think, a great testament to that, giving somebody an opportunity to come in and prove what they could do. Putting them in the advertising side of the business is tough, especially during the financial crisis. I remember that. That was real tough. And then giving those people opportunities in other markets, like Kevin had and Ollie is now Dallas. And most recently, Abby from Greensboro to Austin. I'm sure that was a tough sell. But it's been fun to watch some of the people I've known there kind of be able to be given an opportunity to stay in an organization and continue to grow, which is a big part of the whole purpose of this podcast, is to really help entrepreneurs and business owners stay relevant, impactful, and create cultures that people want to be a part of and grow in. So I just thought it'd be interesting little sidebar to hit on that, not only your background, but just the bigger picture piece of the culture that the organization is creating. Now, you did tell me, again, prior to starting our recording today, a little bit about who owns American City Business Journals as a parent company. So maybe you could touch on that a little bit, because I did not know that, and I'm not sure most people would know that.
Yeah, and that's what because that's what I tell our sales team, and even, on the editorial side, is that people don't know what they don't know. So when I'm always talking about the Business Journals, it's, we're kind of the business side. So our overall parent company is Advanced Publications, which is in New York. It's another huge family-owned business nationwide, which is the Newhouse family. So if you look under that umbrella on the consumer side, that'll be your Condé Nast, the New Yorker, Vogue, Teen Vogue, Discovery Channel, Charter Communications. It's all kind of under that umbrella. And we are the business side.
That's a big organization.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what a lot of people that are locally, they're like, oh, we know you're in a few other markets with the Business Journal. But then we kind of tell them the scope. It's like, oh, okay, so you guys truly are a media conglomerate. It's just you specialize in the local business. You look at the Wall Street Journal, which that's going to be your world news, your national news, which obviously we're second behind them with business reporters in the field. And our niche is, yes, we're a nationally based publication, but it's the local markets is where we truly...
Great publication.
Yeah.
Very good publication. So part of your business model is to engage with the community and to bring businesses together. In some cases, the large employers in the community, whether it's a panel event, an event that is hosting a panel, or it's an event that is bringing together family businesses. That's something we've participated in before as an organization. Today, though, I was fascinated to talk to you about the best places to work. It's something we've participated in, as I mentioned before. It's something that you and I have talked about prior, just in our relationship, the evolution that it takes to be a best place to work. And we're going to build on this theme over the next few episodes, because, again, I think that program is a great way. I always tell organizations, if they want to kind of get a test of their culture, somewhat informally, in the sense of not going out and hiring a consultant to come in and do a bunch of interviews, enter into the best places to work opportunity and see where you kind of stand. Do you make the cut? And if you make the cut, where do you rank? And then get the report from Quantum. So we'll get into the elements of that. But if you could, TJ, why don't you talk a little bit about what is the best places to work and why is it something that's important to American City Business Journals?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. So events with the Business Journal, it's content events, which you mentioned are the panel discussions, and then it's also the award events. And we have multiple signature award events. Probably our top one is our best places to work, which you mentioned. Our partner in that, we'll kind of get to that in a second, but it's Quantum Workforce. They are our judging partner. What you mentioned, where you don't have to get a consulting firm and pay that pretty penny. You go through the best places to work program through the Business Journals. We do them in all of our markets. And the biggest thing for that is, when you submit the nomination, it's not our newsroom judging it. There's truly a rubric, a science behind it that Quantum Workforce does the judging. And they have the national average of the score that you need to meet, whether it's, they break it down by categories, extra large, medium, and small companies. And each category has that national average. And if you're above it, that's where the rankings start.
Okay.
We rank each category from 1 to whatever that might be in the category. If you're below it, your culture still might be great, but it's just one of those where we can't honor 300 companies at the time. So we had to put a national average. We stopped it there. That nominations, we get Hundreds.
Do you?
Hundreds a year.
How many nominations?
And it's, hundreds. And there's some, that are literally, there's companies that are, let's just say for even math, the national average is 30.0. We'll have some that are 29.9, 29.8. They're right there, but they just aren't making the cut because obviously that's kind of what skews it towards that editorial side where we do make that decision and we do have to put a stopgap there. So after that, you can get the score. So you fill out, the process. It's a long process, but we have a lot of people that sometimes don't submit it because they might not want to know their culture. They might not want to know what they're going to see because you understand when you get those surveys, because if you ask Quantum, you can pay a little extra fee and they'll give you the surveys back from your employees.
Done that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's science behind it. It's I think that's the first piece that's important for people to understand, because I know we've had questions in the past, even in our organization. Well, how did we get picked?
Yeah.
And, I think it's a great place to start, that it's not a local decision. It's a decision based on science that Quantum Workforce looks at all of these companies across the country. And
it's based on the employees, what they say.
Yeah.
And it's not, we get a lot of questions too, just to clarify, is it a popularity contest? You just look at the top tier companies in Charlotte and pick them just because you're trying to sell them a table package or trying to, it's like, no, it's truly what you said. It's based on the employee's response, based on the rubric feeds that, and then you get the overall average.
Yeah. Again, for us to have been participant for several years, I remember paying the extra money, investing in that to get the report from Quantum, because again, that is like a consulting project at that point for, again, a very reasonable price. Yeah, very insightful information to identify, target, and work on.
For better or worse, right?
Yes, that's the better part you want to feed, and the not so good part you want to pay attention to. I'm curious, how have the trends changed, TJ, or what have you seen over the last decade? Again, you've been with the Charlotte Business Journal for 17 years now, in some capacity. So what are the trends that you've seen, and kind of where do you see things today going?
All right, you said, how long do we have?
We've got plenty of time. We've got plenty of time.
So the trend, the easiest way to put it is, let's do it, and I hate to put it in pre-COVID and post-COVID terms.
Yes.
But this is what your whole,
point.
podcast is about, is that culture piece. And I truly believe that is the most important piece with any organization. So pre-COVID, the big thing you're starting to see, it's still always going to be the engagement, the trust, what's going on within the organizations to instill that culture, to give people a sense of meaning at work. That's always going to be there. So you can put that to the side. But we were starting to see like, hey, to attract talent, to keep that culture, to keep your team, we have a ping pong table in the room. We have a foosball table. We have a kegerator, come work for us. They were building this office space. If you didn't have that in there, you were behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
And the open floor plan. That was kind of the big. COVID comes. And I think it truly put into perspective. And this is what you're seeing the top companies come out of it. It's truly, first of all, what is the company's meaning?
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing in the community to give back? This day and age, the workforce, we can say the older generation, that's fine. But the workforce today is, what nonprofits are these companies supporting? What are they doing to put their money where their mouth is? You have all these DEI initiatives that are happening we talked about it with the George Floyd piece, and all these companies coming out and making promises of, hey, we're going to do this and do that. The majority of them are putting their money where their mouth is. They're putting that into action. They're doing what they need to do. And the workforce is seeing that. And they want to work for companies that are passionate about that have true. They're just not coming in to punch a clock to be like, okay, 9, and when it gets 5, I'm out of here. And that leads into the whole work from home, the hybrid piece. You have the companies, the ones that are succeeding. I do always think there needs to be some type of, industries have been working remote for, I think hybrid is still the way it's going to be moving forward in some form or fashion.
Mm-hmm.
But with that being said, I think it's the leniencies these companies are giving their teams to trust them. So it's like, Tim, if I know you're working from home or you're doing your thing, you're not in the office, I'm seeing a desk, but I know you're doing your work because I can see what you're delivering. I can trust you. I don't have to ever worry that you're out playing golf while, you should be doing what you need to be doing because you're being employed by this company. So that is kind of the trend that I'm seeing. And even with our company as well, we've always been, the media company, you always needed to be in the office 9 to 5 out in the community 24/7. And it's disrupted our industry as well.
Yeah, it's definitely that line. I think it's funny when you think about, I remember the early years of us being in best places to work. And it was the foosball tables. It was the kegerator.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one year, I think we came in second place to a company that chartered a jet. All the people to like Puerto Rico or some Caribbean place. I was like, all right, if we're going to lose, that's,
Well,
I get it. Get it. But now it seems, to your point, much more about purpose and impact. And is what I'm doing making a difference? Is who I'm working for making a difference? Are they contributing back to the community and welfare of not only myself as an employee, but the rest of the community? So that seems to be a big shift. Yeah, the hybrid one is also interesting. We have gotten to a place where obviously we all got comfortable with that for a while. And then for us, it's become something that I think is just going to be a future of the part of our work model. I do think there's a balance in there. I'm not sure exactly where it is yet, but I do believe that having people in the office and the live human interaction is certainly better for everyone's well-being.
Well, and you mentioned, that's a great point because it is true. And that's what, kind of what I'm telling my team is, hey, if it's going to be hybrid, we don't have to be in the office Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, just to say we're coming in the office. Like we're going to come in, but there's going to be a purpose. This is why we're coming in. This is what we're going to do. Here's going to be the outcome. Here's going to be the objective. And to your point, it's just good to see each other. It's just good to have that. I hate to say work family, but used to be, it was your family you saw first and the people you work with, it was second, right behind. And hear people say they have work wives or work husbands or those, like just really close friends. And a great example for ours is kind of like the newsroom. We have new reporters coming in. It's great if they can be in the newsroom and hear Eric Spanberg on the phone. They can hear John Downey on the phone, how they're working a source, how they're working a beat, how they're putting a story together. Same thing with any other industries. Like you could have someone coming in, you have a seasoned veteran, and they can shadow them. You need that. And again, I think talking about the hybrid model is funny. It's kind of like politics. Sometimes it can be, very divisive. Some people are very stuck on one side of the hybrid fence and the other. So you got to navigate those waters carefully as well.
Yeah, when you just touched on a topic there, TJ, maybe we can expound on a little bit because I also think that's I don't know if it's a byproduct of COVID or just a byproduct of the times and where we are generationally, but this whole idea of mentoring, shadowing, that's been for one. I remember at least one point in my career, that was something that was common very early in my career. And then it seemed to not be as prevalent as kind of everybody did their thing. But have you seen a trend back towards that?
Absolutely. And I think the mentoring piece, anyone, and I hate to say that anyone that is successful, but you can look at anyone that's successful, they're going to point it down to, it could be a parent, it could be a coach they had, it could be a teacher, it could be someone that you worked with. And mine, if I would say the closest one to start with would be Kevin. He took me under his wing. He told me, showed me the ropes, and then he trusted me from there. And then I attribute a lot of my success to Kevin. And that's truly from a mentorship piece. And I contribute a lot of it to the coaches I had. The biggest thing too with that mentor piece is people, get criticism. They kind of get it turned around sometimes. It's like the best saying that I've ever heard, and I tell my team this, is whenever someone stops coaching you, stops getting onto you, or stops giving you direction, that's when you should start worrying. As long as they're doing that, they're invested in you. They want you to succeed. So I am starting to see that. You see, and Charlotte is a great example, specifically speaking, for this region, there's a ton of mentorship programs. Whether it's nonprofits, we still do our Biz Women Mentoring Monday. That's what we do it nationwide. We've been doing it now for 8+ years. And the greatest thing that you can see that it's always there is go to any of our awards events, which you've been to plenty of them. You partner with us with plenty of them for years. But we just had our Women in Business event, and you can get all 26 women up there when they're accepting their award. I promise you, every single one of them thanked who I just mentioned, whether it's a coach, a parent, kids, coworkers, colleagues, whatever that might be. So that when you take the in-person piece out of it, it's just not as genuine.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So that's always
you definitely lose that.
Yeah.
It's not as easy to do over Zoom. Zoom can be an efficient and effective tool for certain things, but for that aspect of things, it's not terribly effective. Yeah, I was actually talking to one of our associates this morning about that dynamic that none of us have succeeded on our own. Again, back to great place or the best places to work. Those are cultures that foster that type of environment. When you think about, again, best places to work, are there things we talked about where we've come from, kind of where we are? What do you think the future holds for companies that are going to be recognized as a best place to work? What are some of the things that may get them recognized as such?
Obviously, that's a great question. That's the $1 million question. I think every leader, I know yourself's wondering it. I'm wondering that. But to answer your question, I think it's still always going to be what we talked about. It's always going to be how they're fostering that culture, how they're creating a culture of trust, camaraderie. Even if you're the janitor, whoever it might be, you have a say-so in the organization. you're being heard. It's not that top-down leadership approach.
Yep.
And again, that starts with the leaders within the organization. But I do think, what's going to happen is the companies that continue to innovate. That's going to be the biggest key. They have to be nimble. I know there's some companies that have so much red tape that it takes a while to get stuff done. But I think we're going to have to see a lot of them become a lot more nimble and a lot more innovative on how they approach that, on how they recruit, on how they continue to run their business and keep people engaged. Because this pandemic and working from home, I'm curious to see, the best place the scores this year, just to see where they stand, because I think still a lot of people and a lot of employees still feel disconnected. You call them the COVID employees, where some of them haven't even met their office mates yet, or they just started to, and it's been 2 years. So I think the companies that continue to innovate and come up with new ideas on how to get their employees engaged and keep them engaged and give them that sense of purpose will continue to move forward.
Yeah, I think that engagement will be absolutely critical, has been, even if it was in a virtual world, that type of engagement strategies you could employ. But now that we're back together more live, I literally had a conversation with someone last week, small business, 12, 13 employees. And they were like, well, how do you measure the health of your culture? And again, my immediate thought was, well, if you heard of the Business Journal's best ways to work, you should enter that and see where you stand. But what are the things that if business owner, locally a business, what are some of the things that you would recommend, TJ, they look at focusing their energy on relative to the culture? I mean, you've spoken to a lot of them, but are there a couple of things that you think are really critical? If you're going to start to intentionally, as I like to say in the podcast, everybody has a culture. It's a question of whether you intentionally create it or not. And it's not a static thing where you can just put it together, put it on cruise control and walk away. It's like driving a car. You better keep your hands on the wheel and pay attention. So it is something that's living, breathing. But what would be the key things you would say for someone who's starting to intentionally focus on their culture? Should they focus on?
I'll answer this kind of like how I would run the business journal in that regard, especially with less employees, it's a lot easier, obviously. But I mean, at the end of the day, it starts with that communication, just upfront, straightforward communication, meaning if I have my team, let's have a discussion. I want to have a discussion with every single body, everybody, and just be like, hey, what do you think the culture is? What do you want? Like, what's going to make you happy? I hate to use the Simon Sinek thing, but what is your why? What drives you? And then what do you want out of the organization? What do you need from me? And let's have that open conversation. Let's meet. If we need to meet in the middle, let's meet in the middle. But at the end of the day, just making everyone feel involved. And again, larger organizations, it's a little bit tougher. But that's where you have that, the middle management, the managers that have maybe 30 or 40 people under them. But then it's truly just having that authentic communication. Because what I see, the companies that struggle the most, and it happens with everyone because it's tough, is that internal communication. How are we communicating the changes that are going to be made? How we communicate it to everyone? Does people need to have an input? I know some decisions have to be made. They just have to be made. But if you think about it from an overall company standpoint, from the culture standpoint, that's where I think you need to have everyone involved. Everyone needs at least a say-so or a chance to have that say-so. And that's just going to keep everyone engaged. Because if I say something to my C-level executives here in the Charlotte office, and it's going to be heard, it makes you want to speak up even more. It's like, okay, well, that's great. I'm glad you hear me. What can I do to continue for you to trust me? So my input does matter. So I know communication is a very cliche answer, but it's the most important piece.
I heard you say something a little bit more than communication. So I'll unpack that for a minute. I heard transparency. Not being afraid of reality and the truth, and being able to position it and share it with people. Again, there's some things that can't be done in that way, but there are a lot of things that can. The other thing I heard, and again, communication, I think often, unfortunately, people think of in terms of speaking versus listening. And you talked about the importance of listening and literally hearing people. And that's something that I'm fond of saying that I did not make up myself, but there's three things that I think are an important component are, do people feel heard? Do they feel understood? And do they feel appreciated? And I think, as you talked about communication, you talked about transparency, you talked about listening as much as, again, communicating back. And the other piece of that I think is also important to note is collaboration. The whole idea of top-down communication, like one person saying, all right, this is the deal, cascaded through the organization versus that collaborative environment where the conversation is getting people's input and helping everybody have a voice. again, where appropriate. Can't be done in every situation, but there are plenty that it can. And then people have a collective sense of, okay, I was heard, my voice made a difference, and this. And that all really gets back to the whole idea of purpose. Again, I had another discussion early this morning with one of our associates about, I think Simon Sinek's work, Start With Why, obviously fascinating work. I think there's a component of it that I kind of look to relative to the human side of it, which is what is, from a personal perspective, what is it that really drives someone? And in a positive way, it could be, I want to make a difference. I want to help other people. There's obviously monetary motivations and purposes. And then unfortunately, there's also purposes of fear, feelings of inadequacy, things that, might drive someone. Their purpose, in essence, the why is more to satiate some of those feelings. But a healthy why really is, why did I get put here? What's my purpose for being here? And how can the company I work with connect that, help me discover that? Because I think a lot of people need help discovering that. And then how can they connect that back to the work that we do together and make this the best place to work, wherever you are?
Well, and to expand on that, Tim, because you're exactly right. And the biggest thing that I would say, and this is, again, I'm not perfect by any means, but the one thing that I've done with the team, especially on the business side, and I've done this throughout my entire career ever since I got into, a leadership position. And this is where it gets scary. It kind of goes back to the best places, because this is why some companies don't do it, because they don't want to maybe know the answer.
Don't want to hear the answer.
But what I've always told the team is, because when you look, because I remember when I started jobs, I think normally when you start a job, people are just, I hate to say scared, but nervous of their boss, of their superior, or scared. So I try to take it backward and be like, okay, well, I don't want that. Everyone says they have open door policy. I want it to be a true open door policy. Again, some decisions and hard things will be made. That's fine. And there won't be discussion for those decisions. But at the end of the day, if we're having a discussion, I've told, especially again, the business side, I'm having this one-on-one with you. But at the same time, tell me about me. What am I doing? Am I doing something wrong? Can I do something better? Because, I communicate differently with every single person on the team. And I know their communication style. They know mine. And then we just have that open conversation. And it's one of those where I think it just loosens people up. And then again, it leads back to they feel heard. They feel like, hey, it's not him or her speaking down to me. It's we're doing this together. And that's what I tell them. We're in this fight together. I want to succeed. If you succeed, I succeed. If I succeed, you succeed. It's all, circular when it comes to that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that speaks to vulnerability in leadership, which again is not something certainly my generation was taught. It was, resolve, show no fear, don't be vulnerable, don't show your cards. But again, I think when it gets to communication and culture, being vulnerable helps people feel safe, and people feeling safe opens them up to expressing themselves more.
Well, you're exact. And trust me, there's sometimes like I hold my breath, and there's some conversations where I leave and I'm in the car driving home, and it's like, did I want to hear that? No, but does it help me? It's, I've related all the way back to sports. It's, if a coach isn't telling me what I'm doing wrong so I can get better at something, shame on the coach. He or she needs to have that hard conversation with me of, TJ, you're doing this great, but by the way, if you did this a little bit better, you would be up here instead of, down here. So sometimes they hurt, but that deepens the relationship because you have that trust. And if someone can say that, it's just, I hate to say the word criticism is not the right word, but it's that having those hard conversations, because I can look back at every relationship that I've built, and each and every one's at least had one or two hard conversations.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think it's feedback.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be construed as criticism by someone who doesn't want to hear it and just focuses on something around a personal attack. The feedback is going back to your basketball days. Yeah, if you're running the play wrong, the coach doesn't give you the feedback that, hey, TJ, you're you're not going to run the play right, and you guys aren't going to have a good team.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the piece is if a person can look at it as feedback about how they can improve, and they're open to improving, that makes a huge difference. And that takes, that funny thing is, maybe it's not so funny, actually. I probably shouldn't use that word. It's back to vulnerability. That also takes courage for a leader to be willing to step into those conversations. And that, it can be a challenge depending on the personality of the person they're giving feedback to.
Yeah.
Not everyone receives feedback in the spirit in which it was intended, and not everyone is gifted enough to give feedback in the spirit in which it might be.
It's very true.
Well intended.
That's very true. And self-awareness is key. That's what I tell my team. It's like the biggest thing. If you can just be self-aware and know how people perceive you and you're perceived, like that's going to be a huge difference with the way you communicate and how you deal with internally and externally.
Yeah, that is a major theme of this podcast and has been from the beginning. We'd have an internal leadership program for individuals in our firm that want to participate. It's voluntary, get to apply and participate. And that is a big part of my initial conversation with that group is if I get asked advice, what's the one thing I need to work on? It's self-awareness. Because if you don't have that, it will be difficult to navigate anything else. And the flip side of that is be careful to not say you're self-aware when you're not and think you are.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah.
That's the paradox.
That's the dangerous part. It's like, I am completely self-aware. And everyone around you says, maybe not. That's the danger one. But if you're open to being self-aware, and I talk often about an article that Peter Drucker wrote years ago that became a small book called Managing Oneself. And it was really about how does one focus on becoming self-aware and cultivating that, keeping that, and then building structures around themselves to kind of help people keep them on that path. All right. Well, so best places to work is definitely something that every business in Charlotte should do. They, of course, should be reading the Charlotte Business Journal and be a subscriber as well. We cover that at every event.
We do. Shameless self-plug. Yes. You have to.
They're not even shameless. I mean, it's a fantastic source of news. The world is changing very quickly, and you guys do a very good job of covering that. This region is growing very fast, and I know continues to be my primary source of news when it comes to the local environment and Wall Street Journal on a national, international basis. So that's nice and concise. I do appreciate your time here. Is there anything kind of as we wrap up, TJ, you want to add to the conversation?
No, I mean, again, just thank you. Obviously, Mass Mutual Carolinas, yourself, Tim, has been a great partner of the Business Journal in multiple markets that we are in. And then just having this discussion, I'm glad that you're doing this throughout, having multiple individuals talking about the culture piece, because it starts with that. I mean, it starts with, yes, not talking, but having these discussions, knowing what you can do to pinpoint and move the needle forward within your organization. And, just honored that you invited me. So I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for being with us. And yeah, this is an idea born out of earlier. Well, maybe it was late last year now. The days are getting past us quickly, but looking to do a little mini series here with some of the other companies that have won Best Places to Work, just to talk a little bit about their experience and the things they focus on. Because again, I do think there's clearly themes, and those themes, as we've discussed, have changed over the years. It's not just about a fun place where you can bring your dog or have beer or play ping pong or take a nap.
That's still nice, though. Don't get me wrong.
That can be good. I'm not going to take anything away from that, but it's evolved a lot more beyond. That's what we talked about here today. So, TJ, it was great to have you with us, and it was great to be with all our listeners today on another episode of Winning Through Culture. Until our next time together, be well, be impactful, and stay relevant. Thank you.